Welcome back to Haunted and Historic Australia for another episode of the mysterious tales from the land down under. In this episode, we have the Marble Man and Mother Shipton's gold.
The controversial Marble Man of Orange arrived in Sydney in mid-1889 in a blaze of publicity. But was it the fossilised body of a man, as was claimed, or a hoax? Whatever, when it was placed on exhibition, it quickly attracted thousands of curious viewers who paid 20 cents at a time for the privilege. The fact that some authorities condemned the exhibit as a crude fraud did not dampen public interest, for there were other experts who proclaimed that the Marble Man was one of history's great archaeological discoveries. While Orange police and a local doctor described the man as a crude hoax, the eminent Sydney medico, Dr. C.W. McCarthy, held a different view. He was, he said, prepared to stake his reputation on the exhibit's authenticity. The figure was definitely that of a petrified human male. So, while the battle of words went on, the turnstiles clicked even more vigorously, and more cash poured into the pockets of the Marble Man's owner, Mr. Frederick Sala, an Orange quarryman who claimed to have found the body. The story began one day in May 1889 when Sala drove a cart bearing a coffin-like box down the main street of the central western New South Wales town. When he reached the surgery of Dr. Soutar in Anson Street, the horse was reined in, and Sala, calling for help from four men nearby, manhandled the box into the surgery. Dr. Soutar could scarcely believe his eyes when Sala removed the coffin's lid and the doctor peered inside. The figure lying therein had 7 toes, 1 eye and no arms. Otherwise, it was a perfectly proportioned body of a petrified man. Fred Sala explained that he had found it in the Kaliula marble quarry about 50 kilometres outside of Blaney. He'd brought his find, to the doctor because he was not sure whether it was a statue or the fossilised remains of a human being. Dr. Soutar asked Sala to leave the figure with him and he would examine it. A week later, the medico announced his findings. It was a statue, nothing else. But that wasn't the end of the matter. Indeed, it was just the beginning. For in time, other authorities came forward to refute Dr. Soutar's somewhat dogmatic assumption. The whole business of the Marble Man of Orange was surrounded in mystery. The first was where and how had Sala discovered it. To the people of Orange, Fred Sala was nothing more than a labourer at the Kaliula quarry, although later it was learned that he had a financial interest in the enterprise. Top quality marble was quarried at the Kaliula, as it was at Cow Flat and Mullion Creek. In fact, this local marble had an international reputation and was being exported to several countries. In May 1888, rumours began circulating that some bizarre discovery had been made at the Kaliula quarry. There were stories that a man named Fred Sala had unearthed a man who had been turned into marble. When Sala turned up at Dr. Soutar's surgery with the marble figure, the stories proliferated and became more detailed. It was said that while Sala was working in the quarry, he came across 2 marble feet. For a number of weekends after, Sala and his teenage son had secretly visited the quarry, carefully chipping away marble until the entire figure had been exposed. At any rate, after Dr. Soutar had said that the figure was no more than a statue, the medico asked to be shown the spot where the Marble Man had been unearthed. Sala took Dr. Soutar to the quarry, but was unable to show him an impression of the body in the earth and rock from where it might have been removed. This backed Soutar's opinion that Sala was trying to perpetuate a hoax. And so did the modded marble in the quarry, which was different from the pure white composition of the so-called corpse. A week or so later, Dr. Soutar wrote a paper in which he called the marble man the work of an amateur sculptor. He said that in all fossils, textures like water humours from the eyes and the cartilage of the nose dried up after death, but the nose and the remaining eye in Sala's marble man were well formed. Dr. Soutar also said the body had an unequal number of ribs on each side. Although Fred Sala had no convincing reply to these allegations, his apparent self-condemning silence did not detract from the public's interest in his marble man. Indeed, there were few people in the Orange community who did not willingly pay the 20 cents charged to view the body, which by this time was on exhibition in the town. Everything was going fine for Fred Sala when a scientist from Sydney announced that it was obvious to him that the marble man was the petrified corpse of a human. But Sala could do without this sort of publicity. If the figure was a genuine body he had just discovered, it would belong to the state, and the quarryman's plans to exhibit it throughout the world would come to nothing. So Fred Sala started a story that the whole thing might be a fraud. In the face of this latest rumour and demands by doctors to dissect the figure, prominent Orange citizens called for a police inquiry. With people still queuing to inspect the bizarre exhibit, Sub-Inspector Ford set out from Orange to study the Kaliola quarry and question locals. One man he questioned was Joe Bell, who lived at Cow Flat and owned a marble quarry not far out of town. Ford hoped Bell might shed some light on the mystery, for although Fred Sala worked at Kaliola, he had lived at Cow Flat. Bell turned out to be a mine of information. He told the inspector that some time before Sala had ordered a block of marble from him. He had delivered it to the Sala house, and 3 months later had, by accident, seen the reason for Sala's order, a statue of a reclining man. Bell claimed that Sala had worked for weeks on the sculpture, and to ensure that no one discovered what he was up to, had placed his son Edward on guard at the rear of the house. Whenever the boy spotted someone approaching, he would whistle a warning and the partly worked statue would be quickly hidden. After sightings of marble chips in the now abandoned Sala house, Sub-Inspector Ford returned to Orange to make his report. By now the famous marble man of Orange had arrived in Sydney and been placed on exhibition. Although the viewing fee was 20 cents, a tidy sum in those days, thousands filed past the figure lying on a felt-covered platform. Stories coming in from Orange about the marble man's origins only increased the interest in the figure and attracted more paying customers to the exhibition. Sub-Inspector Ford's report said Sala had probably sculpted the marble man, but then a government geologist, after viewing the exhibit, reported that the marble definitely did not come from Orange. Dr. C.W. McCarthy came into the picture then, with the pronouncement that the marble man of Orange was without doubt a petrified human. Support was given to McCarthy's opinion by some Sydney sculptors who said the figure was so perfect it could not have been executed by human hands. Marble dealers, after inspecting the exhibit, came up with a divergence of opinions. One was that it was possibly an old statue which had been discarded by an early settler, but they all agreed that if it was a sculpture, it was beyond the capacity of a quarryman like Fred Sala to make. Nevertheless, most heed was taken of Dr. McCarthy's opinion, for apart from being a highly qualified medical practitioner, he was a noted collector of statues. The marble man of Orange, the doctor said, was a representation of a corpse so perfect that no sculptor would have been capable of reproducing it. Dr. Soutar of Orange didn't know what he was talking about, Dr. McCarthy said. For a start, it was obvious that Soutar knew nothing about art. The outward groupings of the muscles and the bony parts, McCarthy added, were those of a human body relaxing in death. Certain irregularities suggested merely the presence of great pressure exerted by earth and rock. Dr. McCarthy also attacked the Orange medico's theory that pittings on the body had been caused by a sculptor's chisel. It was more probable, McCarthy said, that the pittings were caused by falling pebbles. To support this, he pointed out that there were no such markings on the figure's back. It was a pity, Dr. McCarthy added, that Soutar had not examined the body more closely, because if he had, he would have seen that the body did not have an extra rib on one side. It was nothing more than a fold caused, like previously mentioned irregularities, by the pressures of earth and rock. Writers of letters to the editor had a field day theorising about the marble man. One writer, having noticed that one leg was thinner than the other, suggested the corpse was that of an escaped convict who had worn leg irons. This theory caused another writer to follow up with a suggestion that the convict might have been hiding under a rock ledge which fell, trapping him. Another imaginative writer had the convict attacked by blacks after a spear had pierced an eye, some toes had been chopped off, the arms removed, and the remains buried in the limestone cave. The writer worked on the theory that petrification had taken place when over a period of years lime impregnated water and dripped onto the body and penetrated the tissues. A story which didn't appear in the newspapers but circulated freely suggested that Fred Sala had made a cast from an actual corpse. Certainly this would have explained the figure's almost perfect conformity, but it left a couple of things unexplained. Whose corpse was it, and how had it been marbleized? At any rate, the mystery of the marble man has never been explained. It has been reported that after the Sydney exhibition it was shipped overseas and disappeared. The grandson of old Fred Sala, Mr. Charles Sala, says he remembers seeing the marble man as a schoolboy. From the time I was a baby until I was about 13, it was on the porch of a cottage in Darling Street, Rozelle. I think it was number 645, Mr. Sala said. Later it was moved about 4 blocks up the street. It took 6 men to lift it onto a tabletop truck. It was then put in a backyard, and when the site was developed some years later, it disappeared. Mr. Sala said his father Edward had no doubts that the body was that of a petrified man. No one in the family ever doubted it, Mr. Sala said. But whether it was a genuine or a fake, the interest it created 100 years ago in the use of marble carried the industry along on the crest of a wave for years after.
How interesting, a mummified man in marble. Will we ever know if it was a hoax or not? If he was lost in Sydney, he may be found again.
The man rushing across London's Trafalgar Square early in the morning of August 30, 1906, was trying to catch the last bus home. As he ran, he called out to some nearby policemen. He'd just heard the sound of a window smashing in the Orient Steam Navigation Company's offices nearby. When the police arrived, they found shattered glass and nothing else. The 2 valuable gold lumps, pieces of a once larger nugget that had been displayed there, were gone. The oddly named Mother Shipton nugget has not been seen since. The Mother Shipton lead or mine was part of the Temora, New South Wales gold rush in the 1880s. The reef on which the mine was founded was discovered in September 1881. On last Wednesday afternoon, 14th September 1881, the town was electrified out of its chronic state of dullness into quite a fever of excitement by the news that some extraordinary rich stone had been struck in Upper Temora, and until late hour in the evening curious spectators gathered round where the specimens had been found. Mother Shipton's Prophecies was a collection of predictions said to have been made around the end of the 15th century by Ursula Soutar, variously spelled, of N.S.W, Yorkshire. Among her tips for future wonders were horseless carriages, aircraft and submarines. At least the predictions could be interpreted in these ways, or just about any other. Despite their vagueness, the prophecies were immensely popular in Britain and in Australia. Mother Shipton also foresaw the end of the world. At least she did by 1862, when yet another edition was published, this one inserting a rhyme that was not in the original. The world at an end shall come in 1881. Most people were unaware that this new prediction was a fake, and so popular were the prophecies that, as the year proceeded, the public became increasingly nervous that the world might end. But the owners of Temora claim were not among the gullible, it seems, and defiantly named their asset after the seer. The reef was estimated to go 1,000 ounces, 28 kilograms of gold to the ton, an immensely rich yield. As the inevitable attempts at claim jumping and legal manoeuvres over ownership proceeded, the mine continued to produce astonishing finds. Most amazing of all, the pieces of nugget blasted out of the mine just a few days after the earlier excitement. They are 3 in number, and the gold is almost plentiful in them as the quartz. But the quantity of gold is not so attractive as the peculiar forms which the gold has assumed. These are very striking, and they include the very rare feature in specimens of the kind of gold crystals or octahedrons. The New South Wales Mine Department shrewdly purchased the 3 pieces of gold, not for the government coffers, but for promoting the colony to intending migrants. The nugget, as the pieces were called, went round the world, amazing crowds at displays and exhibitions of all kinds. At the 1886 Colonial and Indian Exhibition in London, the smallest piece of a nugget was offered to and graciously accepted by Her Majesty Queen Victoria. By the time it had disappeared in London, the nugget had been in New Zealand and Chicago, then back to England for the International Exhibition of Mining and Metallurgy at the Crystal Palace. The Kalgoorlie Western Argus enthused. Apart from their intrinsic value, the lumps of gold have been considered among the colony's finest advertising assets. Since they were exhibited in Trafalgar Square, the emigration returns have shown a decided increase. For the first 2 weeks in August, 31 new settlers went out to New South Wales, but for the past fortnight the figures stand at 81. But now they were gone. Hoping to salvage them from the melting down, the insurance company offered a large reward for the return of the 2 pieces, but little hope is entertained of their recovery. By then the Temora rush and the Mother Shipton mine had been long forgotten. However, prospectors are eternally hopeful, and in 1919 the much depleted town of Temora was excited by reports that rich gold had been found around the old mine, and the madness began once more. Were the events predicted in the famous prophecies? Among her other cryptic predictions, Mother Shipton had a couple about gold. Gold shall be found, and found in a land that's not now known. The world upside down shall be, and gold be found at the root of a tree. Perhaps there's something to the famous prophecies after all.
Mother Shipton's prophecies written centuries ago are so fascinating when you go through and read everything she's predicted. Whether it was her actual predictions or someone's gone and added in later on, it is quite fascinating still, and still gets a lot of attention. She apparently prophesied aircraft, submarines, cars, and the end of the world, stating that a fiery dragon would come from the sky. But she also predicted gold being found in a land unknown at that time, which some have said was America and others have said was Australia. And we had quite a lot of gold found here. Could Mother Shipton have been speaking about Australia? Well, it's any wonder she wasn't, because it was the height of everything going back a couple of centuries. Everybody wanted to know where the land down under was. Was it part of Antarctica? We find those kinds of prophecies really fascinating. Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce. It would be interesting to see if any more of her prophecies come true. Well, one thing that you can be really sure of is we're going to have a lot more mysteries coming up on the channel. So be sure to like, subscribe and share, and hit that notification bell so you're aware when we're posting more stories.
Tucked away in the picturesque little village of N.S.W in Yorkshire is Mother Shipton's Cave, and the publicity claims that it is England's oldest still surviving tourist attraction. Good luck fact-checking that, but I can't find anything else that's been charging an admission fee for nearly 400 years. To be fair, good luck fact-checking anything in this story. It's likely that there was a woman called Mother Shipton who lived about 500 years ago, but after that, actual certified references are shaky at best.